with the Warriors trading for Chris Paul, many are surprised to say the least. We knew that Jordan Poole would not be on this team for very much longer. I mean, we've seen everything that's been going on the past few years, obviously the fight with Draymond Green, and it just seemed like it was his time to move on from the team. But the Warriors decide to give a big package for Chris Paul, who was almost cut by the Suns 2 weeks ago, was then traded to the Wizards in exchange for Bradley Beal, and then is traded to the Warriors in exchange for Jordan Poole. So a lot of movement right now in the league between guards, but if we sit back and look at this package, it's very interesting. Why would the Warriors give up this much for a 38-year-old veteran who has never won a championship, though he still is one of the greatest point guards we've seen in the game? They have Steph Curry, and they already have a small lineup, and they need bigs. So why are they trading for a point guard? Let's take a deeper dive into this trade.
Big breaking news out of the NBA for a second day in a row. Chris Paul headed to the Golden State Warriors. That has been confirmed by our NBA insider Bill Ryder. In return for Chris Paul, the Wizards will receive Jordan Poole, Ryan Rollins, and a protected first-round pick in 2030, also a second-round pick in 2027. This news coming just 4 days after Chris Paul was traded from Phoenix to Washington in exchange for Bradley Beal. So a lot of moving parts here. Chris Paul will now play for his fourth team in the past 6 seasons.
So with Jordan Poole being out, let's look at the stats from last season. Obviously, we have Steph Curry in first for the team, and then Clay, but then Jordan Poole too. I mean, he came off the bench for a lot of games, would end up finishing a lot of games too with that small ball lineup that they had with him, Clay, and Andrew Wiggins and Steph all out there at the same time. But Jordan Poole putting up 20 points per game, you're not going to get that from Chris Paul. So where are you going to get this extra scoring from? Because he was a spark plug off the bench when they needed him, or if Curry or Clay needed a game off or they were injured for a while, which we've seen in the past few years, he would go in and be able to be a valuable starter. I know he didn't have the greatest postseason that we'd like to see if you're a Warriors fan, but still, giving up on a kid this early, especially in exchange for Chris Paul, just doesn't seem like the right move for the Warriors at this point. I do want to highlight the opposite side though, because there is definitely an argument on why the Warriors made this trade, and they made it for a reason. I personally don't think it's the right move, but if I'm looking at the management, and there is new management, I think they're trying to change up the system a little bit. Having Jordan Poole coming off the bench, he's obviously a shooting guard. He's going to go out there and shoot the ball all the time, and that's just what he is. He's a volume scorer, and he's going to do that on the Wizards. I wouldn't be surprised if he averages 30 points a game next year, just because he is a volume scorer, and he's going to pretty much be the only player on that team if they keep trading away everyone. But the reason why they're getting Chris Paul is because he's a veteran pass-first point guard, and he will be able to set up the young players and try to build them up. They've had all these guys that they've invested high draft picks in recently, and they want them to pan out. They just haven't been able to, especially with Clay and Steph and Jordan Poole all out there. They're taking all these shots. But now, if you're going to have Steph and Clay take the shots too, especially with Chris Paul, if he's going to be coming off the bench, if he's going to be starting, we don't really know yet. But even if Draymond Green leaves too, we could see Chris Paul pass the ball to these young players and help them develop, and I think that's why they brought him in. One name in particular that this will help is Jonathan Kuminga. Obviously, if Draymond Green leaves, he will probably get propelled into the starting lineup. Even if Draymond doesn't leave, we don't really know what's going to happen between Kuminga and potentially a guy like Kevon Looney could start. I mean, they have to have a center be starting in this lineup, so one of those two guys, but Chris Paul will be able to help the development, and just having that veteran voice is huge. We've seen what happened in the past between Draymond and Chris Paul. Draymond, not a huge fan of Chris Paul overall, so that might lead him to leaving, but we still don't really know what's going on with Draymond. I can't see him leaving the Warriors, but if he does, a guy like Kuminga will have to step up, Looney will have to step up, and Chris Paul will be able to help set these guys up. He's one of the best passing point guards, if not the best that we've seen. Probably the best within this generation, but he's definitely up there with guys like Magic. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but one of the best point guards that we've seen in the game, and he's going to be next to another one of the best point guards in this game, arguably the greatest point guard of all time, Steph Curry. I still have Magic above him, but that's a debate for another day. but these two guys are going to help try to propel this team to another championship. Klay Thompson has taken a little step back recently, especially coming off of that injury. He's been fine, but there's definitely been some instances where we look at him and he's not the same player that he was before. Maybe that's just coming out of his prime. He's not in his prime at this point. But they still have guys like Andrew Wiggins who will be able to step up for this team. And the roster's still solid. I don't think this team immediately puts them into championship status, but they're still a contender. I mean, we saw what they did last year with not a great roster overall outside of the big three that they had. But this team is loading up on Chris Paul, and this may not be the greatest move. I personally am not the biggest fan of this move overall, but there's definitely some upside that could come with this trade. But let me know what you guys think down below, because this is a trade that a lot of people are looking at, and a lot of people have different opinions, and I want to hear yours down below. So if you enjoyed this, make sure you let me know down below what you think of this trade, and I'll see you in the next one.